Or what do you think about buffers or?
So I'll offer my opinion with regard to that. You know, Dogger has established critical wells in location to particular residents or national wetlands or national preserves. Is there a certain minimum distance that has to be? I think it really gets back that your first thing should be establishing a well that is safe. If you establish a well as safe and the criteria for determining that that well is safe to operate, there shouldn't be necessarily a need for an arbitrary distance from the public. The distance to the public, just like with the critical well definition for Dogger, may add additional requirements to ensure that well is safe. Dogger's example, critical well requires subsurface safety valves, shallow subsurface safety valves on those wells that are within 100 feet of the National Preserve and 300 feet of the residence. So the first primary goal is if the well is safe to operate, then if you have concerns about the population in near proximity, then is there something else to make it even safer for those residents to operate? Not to set an arbitrary distance.
Well, some is after the fact and others maybe lessons learned, correct?
Correct. So I can't say that there's a particular distance. I think the critical item is establishing what the requirements are to ensure a safe operation of that well.
So you're in favor of the subsurface kind of safety valves, providing the technology is?
Well, I can't really comment on subsurface safety. I mean, you heard a lot from both Dogger and from my friend here at Gill Ranch. The operation, it has to be technically feasible. We do have some subsurface safety valves in some wells, and it is for those occurrences when the wellhead is damaged, whether it's from landslide or something activity. So that's part of the whole development of the regulations. Whether they'll be part of them, I guess we'll find out over time.
Ms. Mordick, did you have a comment on subsurface safety valves and whether the technology is adequate or something you would recommend?
I mean, I think having the presence of safety valves, whether at surface or in subsurface, is important. And in some cases, perhaps depending on the proximity to sensitive receptors, maybe you want both. But I think they need to be part of a sort of holistic system. There need to be multiple redundant barriers. It's part of the well design and construction to begin with. Yeah, so I guess I wouldn't hang my hat on either, but I think they're important components to consider as part of the entire well.
Multiple strategies to reduce risk. So final question for me is, what would you consider the most important action necessary to ensure well safety? You're me, and you have to talk to a room full of Porter Ranch residents.
Thank you for the question. It's a very difficult question. I think if I was to look at what I hate to say it's the most important. I think one of the elements.
One of them.
It's establishing that baseline for an active risk management program. To know what condition your well is in today and how it changes over time. So having an appropriate risk management program that allows for data to be used is critical, and that's the direction we're heading. And I think that's the direction AP 1171 has. But it's also those assistant standards across all the storage fields that we have and how it applies to California. But I think an appropriate risk management program, baseline assessment, regular interval testing, whether it's 3, 5, 7, 10 years, to create the trends that you're looking at, so then you can create mitigated measures. I think is probably some of the most critical items.
And were those in place prior to this? No.
There was no requirement. That's why we basically took the proactive approach and filed in 2014 to establish that.
Okay. Mr. Weber, your opinion on the most important action necessary to ensure well safety, either from your perspective or just statewide? And
it all starts with the risk management plan, but I think if I was sitting on the other side and I was in Santa Clarita and you're trying to tell me it's a trust but verified, so I want to say, well, how do you prove that? Well, for me, it's we test these wells, the results are independently validated that the wells meet these integrity. So it's about the risk management plan driving a well integrity management plan. I mean, they were talking about distribution integrity and transmission integrity, which are pipeline programs. But it's about having a program and conducting tests and having those tests prove that that well is safe. Not just saying it's safe because we built it this way, but we run the tests on the well that validate that it is, in fact, still safe today and that nothing has deteriorated. And so there are measures we take every day to do that. So it starts with, it's about testing and validating that the baseline of that well is still in place and we have not moved.
And how do we share that transparency with the public?
I mean, sitting here right now, to me, it's not just publishing the report that I send to Dogger. We have to find a mechanism that gives them what they want. I don't know just sitting here right now, but for me, there's a balance between full disclosure and security risk. So I want to give people the information that can be independently verified so that it can then be proven, but I haven't sat down and figured out exactly how to do that.
I guess it comes back to that trust but verified. That's the kinds of information they're wanting to know. They've asked me, so which one of those 114 wells didn't pass the, the first two steps? How do we provide that information? So that's sort of up in the air, you think, as an issue to fully vet.
It is, I guess, and there's a collaboration. I use the example of audited financials. You buy stock in a public company and you look at the financials and an independent auditor goes there. There needs to be somebody who provides that audit function that people can say, I can look at them and I know they are reliable and trustworthy and they've done these things and they're held to a standard. There has to be a way to do that.
All right. Mr. Downs, do you have, an opinion on that?
Yes, I've got a combination of things. I think that the inspections are huge. I also believe that the training of the operators out there. Years back, we had a situation at our Playa del Rey plant where it actually had a little fire, and it was all human error. So, I think the two of them, I think you want the best of the best out, walking it and being out there on the ground. And I also think the inspections are huge.
Do you regularly interact with anyone from Dogger or SoCalGas when you're in the field?
I've worked for the gas company for 35 years, and I've never met anybody from Dogger. So far as the company, we are dealing more and more with the training aspect.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mordick?
Well, I'd say it really takes completely rethinking how these facilities are regulated. I think up until this point, there's been a very piecemeal approach to regulation of these facilities. Different chunks are added on over the years, but, now is really the time to step back and think about a holistic approach. There need to be clear, transparent, and enforceable standards. But there also has to be a process of continuous improvement. I think there's been this sort of set it and forget it mentality. Your permit's been issued, go do what you want. There needs to be a lot more interaction between Dogger and the operators. Like I said, there really have to be clear and enforceable standards.
I want to thank all four of you for taking the time to spend the last hour and a half with us. Very, very helpful, because one of the reasons I've stayed engaged in this, of course, these are people that are constituents and residents in my district, but I told them after the leak has stopped in that one well 2 months ago, that I'm going to stay with this, and the legislature will too, to make sure that there's reforms or new regulations in place to minimize the risk to these residents, that the problem isn't just going to go away because we've stopped the one well. This is going to be a challenge moving forward, providing the oversight, legislative oversight. Senator Allen, you're working on protocols for notification. That's an important piece of it. We learned from this that it took weeks and months. Senator Huff, I didn't know if you had any comments, but you've been engaged not only on the ground in hearings and workshops, but are jointly authoring several bills in this regard. Did you have any final comments before we Okay?
I have a question. Do we have any
Yes.
idea on the testing and where that is at this point, and when we'll be able to use that field again?
As I mentioned, we've done most of the first phase testing. That's progressing, fairly rapidly. That's the easy part of the testing as far as time constraints. And we're moving forward with, inspections of, as I mentioned, 8 workable rigs. The question will be, at what point do you bring the field back on for injection and still meet the withdrawal capability requirements you need for the summer reliability? As was mentioned earlier, once you bring those wells back on, your withdrawal capability, injection capability is only through the tubing, which will reduce the capacity of the individual wells. So you have that trade-off between having capability today using casing versus in the future only using tubing. And you'll have a limited number of wells available because you'll have to plug all the rest. So at that point, it's our expectation that we should have it, by the end of the summer. Whether it can be sooner, that's yet to be determined. We have to consider not only the summer reliability issues, but the winter reliability issues for the core customers, where you have higher demands on our system than during the summer, and you have individual homeowners that are relying on gas for their heat their home and their hot water. So our plan is now sometime the end of summer, and we're working with the California Public Utilities Commission, CEC, and CalISO, trying to lay out the plans for the summer along with the plans for the winter.
And it's your belief that with the testing that you're doing now, you're doing the first phase testing, then you'll be doing more of the detailed testing, that we will indeed have a safe field in working with all the regulatory agencies and all the above we've been hearing about?
Yeah, myself and the rest of the senior management team at SoCalGas is not going to provide this field to DOG or to certify that it's safe until we believe it's safe. And the testing that we're doing, the 6 different tests that we're doing, we're really taking a close and hard look at those fields, and we know exactly what the condition of those wells are. And we believe that when we bring that field back on, not only will the casing be safe to operate, it won't be operated because we'll use tubing flow only. That will be that buffer zone. So if you had even if you had a leak in the tubing to go to the casing, that casing has been pressure tested to withstand the pressure, but you have time to react, and you have time to do things to remove that pressure off the casing. So I truly believe, and we will not make it available until it's safe, and it will be safe.
Thank you.
Senator Allen?
Well, I wanted to thank everybody for coming in as well, and I apologize for having to run off to the Budget Committee, and now we're back. I just wanted to get a little bit more information about what has been discovered at Playa del Rey. I understand that some of the increased testing that has happened as a result of some of the follow-up on Aliso Canyon has resulted in the discovery of some more leaks, and that's a good thing. I mean, right, it's good that we're getting more exposure, when we're getting more information, we're testing these things, we're checking much more carefully. Just couldn't help but notice that, on this list of the active gas storage facilities, Playa del Rey is basically tied for oldest in the state, along with Goleta, having been started in the 40s, in 1942. And just like Aliso Canyon, it's obviously much smaller than Aliso Canyon, but it's right in the middle of a residential area and in the heart of coastal Los Angeles. So I understand there's been 2 leaks found. I want to get a better sense of exactly what was discovered. What are some lessons learned? What should we know coming out of this, et cetera?
Thank you for the question, Senator Allen. At Playa del Rey, as I mentioned before, a lot of the wells are tubing flow only. Therefore, they are tubing flow only.
Tubing flow?
Tubing.
Tubing inside.
Tubing flow, right.
Okay. So that what the leaks that you've identified really are anomalies in pressure in the casing. Casing operating at a certain pressure, so we found that the gas leaked from the tubing in the casing, which we're able to then bleed off into our withdrawal system and manage that pressure. Once we have identified that there's an issue, then we basically will go in and plug and kill the well until we can address it. So I want to make sure we understand that what is being found at Playa del Rey are areas in which that secondary containment is actually working exactly what it's intended to. It's just that now you have an anomaly that's been identified and it's being addressed. So, and let me add to that if I could. And as we go in to look at fixing the tubing, we've committed to run the full suite of tests that we have at Aliso Canyon, which is all the enhanced inspection as well.
Could you just tell me exactly what you discovered there at Playa del Rey?
Well, one of them was the thread leak. You know, the pipe is threaded together. There was slightly leaking out the threading of the tubing into the casing.
And where does that then go? Is that
It's contained within the casing, and then we're able to basically bleed that off or open that valve into our withdrawal system so it never goes into the atmosphere.
okay? And I understand, but there were two things, right?
Both of them are very similar in nature.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah, and look, I mean, I think ultimately what we're hoping to get out of this awful experience at Aliso Canyon is much quicker checking and engagement and remediation. But, you know, obviously you know as well as anyone else that there's a lot of concerns about that well there.
Can I add one additional thing?
Sure.
Based on those things, what we've committed to run all the first phase of testing, the temperature noise in all the wells at Playa del Rey. And we should have, we're going to submit a plan on the timing of that fairly shortly to Dogger, which will then basically give us a inspection on the temperature noise. Also, all those wells have gone through pressure tests recently. There's mention of a requirement for a 5-year pressure test. They've all gone through a pressure test requirement recently to test that the casing itself will withstand the pressures of the field.
Uh-huh. Let me ask you, my final question is kind of more broad sweeping. And maybe I throw this out to anyone on the panel. What are best practices around the world with regards to natural gas storage? I mean, is there some country out there that is doing it right that we ought to be looking at? Are we, you know, oftentimes I know we have always done things the way we always do them, and sometimes it's instructive to look at international examples. And you're all experts, and I'd love to hear if there's anything we can learn from other countries in this, or other states.
Ms. Mordek, do you have an idea? Other states, you had mentioned Kansas.
Yeah, I'm not sure about other countries, but yeah, certainly other states, unfortunately, that have had similar disasters with underground gas storage facilities have, you know, made significant changes to their programs, Kansas being one. You know, Texas has made some changes. So I wouldn't say that I wouldn't point to any one state and say they're doing everything right, but there's certainly other states that, you know, California could take lessons from. And, you know, it's just unfortunate that had to happen in the wake of California's own disaster instead of before that.
Okay. And if there's anyone from the previous panel, unfortunately, I wasn't able to ask anyone, but if anyone has an answer to that, I'd love to hear interesting international examples. I just think that sometimes they can be very instructive, but.
Jason's thinking about it.
Okay.
He's not sure if he wants to do this, but he's.
Senator, we are looking at the API standards. We're also looking at some of the very things that Kansas had attempted to use. I don't know the current status of their rules, whether they've been stayed. This is an area that does have some overlap, state and federal primacy type questions. But we are looking to be able to say when we're done that California has the strongest regulations. That's our goal.
Can you, you know, and I apologize if someone's discussed this earlier, but what has Kansas done that has made them cutting edge in this area? What specific changes have they made?
I'd actually want one of our engineers to be able to address that, and we don't have one of those people here today. But if you'd like, we can set up some time and get together with you and follow up.
Brianna, do you have any sense of?
I mean, one of the things they did was basically kind of put a halt to all their injection or all their gas storage projects. They basically made them reapply for provisional permits. It was basically sort of a big data call in. They essentially made them sort of re-justify that those projects were operating correctly, and then they made them reapply for a permanent permit. In addition to that, I mean, they just really stepped up their standards for well integrity, for well testing. Unfortunately, as Jason mentioned, those rules have been stayed for an unrelated, or I guess related but unrelated issue, or an issue that hopefully won't come up in California. But But yeah, they really took a fresh look at the whole program.
Okay. All right. And then for Robin, do you have this? I mean, I'd love to get your sense of kind of morale right now amongst the workers. Is there? Do you have a kind of a read on where your folks are on what's happened? Is there a kind of a sense of fear, concern? Maybe think it's a tempest in teapot. Like what's the read on the streets from your folks?
You know, that's a very good question, and I wish I had a good answer for you. I don't think so far as the work itself, there's no fear from the members, or, you know, they're doing what's got to be done. They feel safe. They, you know, are getting better training, but I think it needs to improve, but they're okay. The fear is, I think right now, when you're in a company truck, and it's not only storage or transmission, I think it's company-wide. When you're driving, you know, the gas company truck and there's a blue flame on the door, you're still a target. We've had not only my members, but members of other locals been cussed at by the public, things thrown at them, that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's a hard one.
Okay, so not a target in a dangerous sense, but but maybe a demoralizing sense. I mean, is there?
It is.
Okay.
And you know, we're willing, and we've talked with the company, we're willing to work with the company to, you know, to try to get the reputation for the Blue Flame back to where it should be.
Right. Right. And hopefully, look, I mean, there have been discussions about trying to make lemonade out of these lemons, you know, and really putting SoCalGas at the forefront of you know, R&D and scaling of biogas and you know, GHG combating natural gas options. And so, you know, I think we're all really excited and interested in that discussion, and, you know, working with you to really get something positive out of this experience that could actually help the energy future of the state.
All right, thank you, Senator Allen, and thank you all four panelists. Appreciate your comments and your expertise. And let's open it up. May I see hands of anyone who would like, under public comment, to make a few comments? Is there any hands up in the room so I can appropriate times? No one here. Okay. So with that, I want to thank all of you for attending. I want to thank the regulatory panel at the beginning and the stakeholder panel. We've been taking copious notes, and it'll help us inform legislation as it moves through the process. And please keep us updated on all things Aliso Canyon and natural gas around the state. Have a good day.